My guest today is Jason Shen, who has only been out of college for a few years, but has done a lot of cool things in his career so far. He is currently a co-founder of RideJoy, a Y Combinator-backed community marketplace for ride sharing, pairing drivers who offer rides with passengers who need them. We'll let him get into all the details in a moment. Jason, it's a real treat to have you. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's great to be here.
I would love to start out by first just getting a sense of your background. Can you tell us, how old are you, what's your academic background, and where have you worked in the past?
Sure thing. I'm 26 years old right now. My background briefly was I was born in China, moved to the United States when I was 3, grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, came to college at Stanford, studied biology, got a bachelor's in biology with a sort of honors thesis in ethics and society, which meant I took a lot of philosophy classes. I stuck around, did a master's in biology. During that time in college at Stanford, I was deeply involved in the gymnastics team, and I was captain of the 2009 NCAA championship winning gymnastics team, which was a real pleasure. After college, my first job was being the chief operating officer of the Stanford Daily, which was basically running a lot of the business operations for this sort of nonprofit but very business-oriented company. I then took a job at a startup called iSocket, where I was a customer scout, which meant I was doing a lot of sales, marketing, along with some customer support. And then after that, I started a Y Combinator-backed company with my friends and roommates, Calvin and Randy. It's called RideJoy. We help people share rides all across the US and Canada. And then the one other thing to mention is that while I was at Stanford, I started a nonprofit that focused on supporting microfinance loans to entrepreneurs in the developing world with Calvin, who eventually became the co-founder of RideJoy with me. So those are kind of the highlights.
Awesome, great. I would love to sort of step in and, tell us a little bit about how your career has unfolded to take you to your current role, and in particular, what were the major thought processes you went through at each of the major decision moments you had along the way?
Sure. So I would say that it kind of comes back to my interest in technology in middle school and high school. I really liked seeing all the different kinds of technologies that were out there, playing with things like Photoshop, learning HTML, messing around, making little GeoCities page, little things like that. Nothing too serious, but I always found playing with computers pretty cool. I did well in sort of the science-based classes in high school. I took a couple AP courses, and so when I got to Stanford, I kind of had a general interest in science. And in my freshman year, I explored a bunch of different classes, but realized that, I thought something more science-oriented was going to be best for me. I majored in biology because it kind of had a broad range of different science, physics, chemistry, as well as biology, and there wasn't as many problem sets. So that was a practical consideration. I loved all the energy that was happening in Silicon Valley, seeing Google, seeing Apple, seeing all these different startups coming up, but I didn't know how I would be able to play a role in these companies because I wasn't a programmer. I had taken some programming classes in college or in high school, and then a little bit in college as well, but I always really struggled with the amount of time it took and the sort of mental processes that it required that, for whatever reason, weren't something that I felt particularly an area where I could excel. So, I was like, if I'm not a programmer, how do I get involved in a tech company? Before starting a nonprofit, there was one other thing that really sort of turned me on to the idea of entrepreneurship, and that was I created a book. I had this idea. I wanted to create a book that collected Stanford students' thoughts, and it was originally, so this was at the end of my freshman year to the end of my sophomore year. I called it the Stanford Spirit, and I created this form where people could write in. It was sort of 3 prompts. I remember I live for, and I would like to. And you would sort of fill in with your responses. I remember these things. posted advertising everywhere. I sort of convinced the bookstore to give me free gift cards that I could use as a reward for people to post. I tried to recruit a co-founder who was someone that I'd read a column in the Stanford Daily that seemed interesting, and we worked together, and a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately I was able to get an ISBN number, get these books printed, sold 50 copies to the bookstore, and like in over the course of 1 year. And I was like, at the end of the year, I was like, holy shit, this is something that a year ago I had in my head. It was just a thought. And now there are like physical versions of this like real book that I've like sold to somebody who they wrote me a check for this thing that I just like thought of. And that was sort of amazing to me on a lot of levels. And so that was kind of one breakthrough, but it was a very personal endeavor. Starting Gumball Capital with Calvin Wang, as well as another friend, that was more of a group effort. And so that was seeing that like, wow, when a couple people come together with a shared vision, the results can be even more tremendous. We worked with college campuses across the country. We were able to raise, close to 900 microfinance loans. I mean, that was an accomplishment on an even greater scale than I could have imagined. Doing something on my own. Doing with group, clearly, there's this additional level of power that comes with it. So, at the end of college, I realized that I didn't want to do research. I didn't want to be a doctor. I had explored those areas, done shadowing, done research, but I realized it wasn't for me. I took the Stanford Daily job because it kind of was a balance between, there was this business element of it, which I really liked. You were in charge of the P&L statements. You were managing other, in this case, adults who had maybe working at the Daily part-time for a decade, and also in charge of generating revenue through ad sales and things like that. But it was also a nonprofit as its model, which I was familiar with, and it had a mission that was, to be the paper of record for the Stanford community, which is, something that the company took seriously. So that was a great role. I learned a huge amount about what it's like to really run a business, the mechanics of a business, and that led to me realizing that I really could contribute to a startup in a more business role, that there was business opportunities available, that I was developing real skills that could contribute to a startup. So from there, I was able to, that was actually I started applying to startups, and I wasn't quite getting the traction I wanted. I was doing some creative things. I had applied to Airbnb with this kind of slideshow that, and I had an interview, but ultimately it didn't give me an offer. The kind of breakthrough, to be honest, was when someone I knew was trying to leave the startup world and enter the nonprofit world, and I was trying to, basically do the opposite. So he'd been talking to me, asking to meet up, and I was kind of brushing him off. I didn't want to talk to him, and finally I sat down with him. I was like, "Wow, this is great." I gave him some names of people that I thought he could talk to, and he gave me the names of some people he thought I should talk to, including a recruiter who ultimately helped me identify this role at iSocket, which is usually not common. A recruiter usually doesn't recruit for business positions. They're usually recruiting for engineers. So it is sort of an uncommon stroke of luck that this happened, but there it was, and it was good. So jumped into this role at iSocket. I think the co-founder really liked me and the CEO really liked me because he was also an athlete, and he also hurt himself very seriously during doing athletics. And I'd blown out my knee while doing gymnastics. That's why I stayed a fifth year. And also I had this advertising experience, and I understood where sort of the future of advertising was going. I think I really understood his vision better than nearly anyone else at the company, from a business perspective. So worked there for 9-10 months, gained a lot of sort of tactical skills on dealing with customers, closing customers over the phone, doing support for them, managing, working with engineers when there are bugs and things that need to be fixed. So and also seeing just generally how to pitch. The John Ramey, the CEO and founder of iSocket, is a really incredible salesman, and I mean that in sort of the best way um, possible. So I learned a tremendous amount there, and but at the same time, I was still really excited about the idea of doing a startup for myself. Some opportunity came together when me, Calvin, and Randy, who the three of us are roommates. Calvin was at the time working at a startup called One Block Off the Grid, which was like a solar group, a Groupon for solar panel installations. So they'd bundle a lot of people together and get them a discount. Randy was an engineer at Scribd, which is a YC company, and we were all friends, and we started talking about what if we did something together, and what if we applied to Y Combinator, what could we do? And so something that starts off really easy, you sort of, oh, we'll just fill out the application and see what happens, right? That those commitments roll and roll and roll, and eventually, we came up with some ideas that we really liked. We got an interview. Um, as you know from the Vanity Fair article, we pitched a different idea at the interview, and then they got it. They accepted us, even though they weren't sure about either of these ideas, but they figured we'd come up with a new idea, which we did, and that was RideJoy. And I've been doing RideJoy for over a year now, and it's been a really incredible experience.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And for those who aren't aware of the Vanity Fair article that you're talking about, what exactly is that article?
So there was a journalist named Randall Strauss who gained permission from Paul Graham to be basically embedded inside a YC batch, which happened to be the summer of 2011, which was when RideJoy was incubated. So he sat in on interview meetings. He sat in when the partners were just talking among themselves. He interviewed lots of YC founders. He was at the dinners. And he would, sometimes sit one-on-one with us and talk to us about our companies. And through that, he wrote a book called The Launchpad, inside Y Combinator, the most exclusive, Silicon Valley's most exclusive school for startups. Pretty hyperbolic name, but the actual content is extremely, it's very accurate. It's very cut and dry. It's not sort of breathless commentary. And Vanity Fair published an excerpt of the book, which included sort of our journey, from our backgrounds to the pitch to incubating ideas to prototype day, and then finally demo day, where we sort of show off what we've done in the past 3 months.
Got it. And speaking of journalism, you started and you frequently blog on your own blog, The Art of Ass Kicking, which is definitely a cool name, very catchy, and it's highly trafficked. Tell us a little bit about, what that's about, how it got started, what do you write there, and what are you hoping to achieve there?
Yeah, that's a really great segue, because the blog started in the fall of 2010, so it's been about 2 years now, and I had been interested in blogging, and I had started a WordPress blog in college, but you write some posts here and there sporadically and kind of died off. And then at one point I had a Tumblr where I was sort of using it the way a lot of people do, just kind of saving links, saving pictures, saving quotes, not really writing a lot of posts, but more curating content. And I finally gave blogging another shot because of my coworker Ryan Hupfer at iSocket. We had been talking. He had a blog called Hup and Steph, which was him and his girlfriend, then later wife, where they were just sort of documented their personal lives, trips that they'd taken, things that they were doing. And here and there he'd throw in like a more, sort of content-oriented post, like he had this shoulder surgery and he had looked online for all information about this type of surgery and he couldn't find anything. So finally he wrote an article about what it's like to get the surgery, what you should expect, the recovery, all these things. And he says, to this day, people email him saying, I found your blog post about the shoulder surgery. Thank you for writing that. I, have this coming up and I'm really nervous about it. And your post really helped me feel better and gave good content, gave good info. And he's like, look, if you write this post and, one person's life is changed in this way, it's worth it, right? Because that was one of the things I kept saying to him, like, but nobody reads my blog post. What's the point? This feels like a waste of time. Um, and he was like, yeah, if one person reads it, it's worth it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I should just write to share some of my own experiences. If anyone finds this valuable, that would be great. And, it's a good chance to practice writing. It's a good chance to sort of internalize some of those lessons that I am learning now at the startup. And I had also previously wanted to blog a little bit while I was at the Stanford Daily because I'd been learning a lot about sort of the future of journalism. But at that time, the editor-in-chief was like, it's kind of weird for you to be blogging because you're not on the editorial team. This is kind of weird. So I had this like pent up sort of itch to do that. And so this was a great chance to do that. So started off, it was just jasonshen.com. It wasn't called The Art of Ask a King right away. I just started writing blog posts about things I was learning at the startup. And then sort of the breakthrough moment was when I teamed up with a friend, Derek Flansreich, who was someone, also a recent grad, who had been writing about, who had a couple interesting blog posts himself about how TV was going to get disrupted and how this basically got him a job at a TV startup because everyone was reading this TV blog post. And I was like, hey, I'm writing a blog post about how recent grads can get jobs at startups. And, especially non-technical ones, like, do you want to look over my draft? And he looked it over, added like a ton of other comments. And I was like, okay, I guess we can co-write this article. And so we did. We wrote this article called How to Get a Killer Job at a Tech Startup as a Recent Grad. And we posted that on Hacker News, which is sort of the community tech watering hole run by Y Combinator, no less. And it did really well. It hit the front page. It had 35 upvotes. And so that meant that something around 3,000 to 4,000 people had read that page in one day, which, previously my blog was getting like maybe 15 visits a day, very, very, very minimal. Some days like nobody would come. And that was like mind blowing to me. I was like, holy crap, I could write this post and all these people read it. Sure, like most of them just skimmed it or just left, but still at least like a few hundred people like read the whole thing, that's kind of amazing. And that was really motivating to me, and people wrote good comments saying that this was helpful to them. And so it really sort of motivated me to continue writing and to continue providing value to readers and hoping to get those bumps where a lot of people check out the post. So I've been doing that for about 2 years now, and my traffic is still pretty spiky, but it built my sort of personal brand as someone in the startup space. It helped me sort of improve my own ability to communicate. It's helped me form numerous connections that, offer that serendipity that normally would not happen. Someone stumbles across your post, sends you an email, you guys meet up for coffee, like all kinds of really interesting things happen from that. And now it's starting to become a distribution platform for me. If there's something that I want to get out there, that I want to talk about, and I want people to see, I can write it on my blog post. I've created this mailing list. People, get it delivered straight into their inbox. If I share it online, a lot of people can pick it up. And then the last thing, the value it provides me is that it's like a sandbox. So, if there's some new service that is supposed to double conversion rates or something, I can just like install the code on my blog and see what happens. And I've been able to test a lot of things like learning more about email marketing or learning about how to tie in my Wufoo form into MailChimp and doing all these things. There's just like a low risk way to like learn stuff without, like, if it breaks, fine. Like, no one's going to yell at me. It's just it's my site. And like, sure, I'm not happy that if it's down, but it's not the end of the world. So yeah, the blog has been really valuable in a lot of different ways.
Cool. I want to. So that happened while you were at iSocket, and it's grown, really nicely since then. I want to sort of walk through the step by step of the transition into the early conversations of, yeah, maybe we might throw in an application to Y Combinator, to the actual, okay, let's do this, let's start writing it, and then then getting really buttoned down in terms of, what was in the application, how you presented yourselves, how you approached the interviews. I want to talk about sort of the entryway in, and then also the experience once you were in, exactly kind of what happened and what people would expect for those who are not super familiar with it. So could you maybe walk us through from the early days to the, leaving the interview room, having completed your interview with the YC partners, what that process and journey was like, and what you learned along the way in terms of, best practices?
Sure. So let's see. Me, Calvin, and Randy have all been sort of great fans and admirers of Paul Graham. He has written a number of very influential essays on his website that we've all been reading through college. I remember looking back and seeing that, like, in my sophomore year, I emailed one of these essays to my girlfriend, being like, "This is so great! You got to check this out." So we've been aware of him and what they've been doing for some time. And I think we all sort of thought about doing something there, but none of us had really that desire hadn't crystallized, and hadn't crystallized, in part because we didn't know who we were going to start with. Maybe we weren't 100% sure about an idea that was just going to like really nail it. But it partly was triggered because in January of 2011, Calvin was finishing his time at One Block Off the Grid. He had been there, I think, maybe, yeah, since college, basically. So 2.5 years, which is a pretty long time in the startup world. And he was getting ready to actually sort of travel the world, travel the US, and go abroad and things like that. But, a couple days before he left, he like sent an email to me and Randy. And, Calvin we joke about this, but Calvin will once in a while send these emails that are just like life-changing emails. I'll just be like, "Hey, what do you guys think about like us doing like a Y Combinator application, like the three of us?" And I was like, I hadn't really thought about that, but when you mention it, like, I'm very interested. Like, let's talk about this. And I think Randy was probably the most, I don't want to say like content to stay at his job, but he, felt like he was learning a lot, and he really, enjoyed his coworkers, enjoyed everything about working at Scribd. So, he's like, I could see myself leaving sometime, but I don't know, like so soon, right? So, but we spent a lot of time talking about it, and I think we like, we were still not quite there, and it was like the day before Calvin was going to leave, and we like were talking, and he had to go home, so we like drove home to his house in Saratoga together from San Francisco. We live in San Francisco, and we drove home together, and we like, it sounds so silly, but we like slept over at his house, and we were like talking, and we just kept talking about it. Finally, we were like, all right, let's just try it, So that was sort of step one, like commitment. We're going to try to do this. And so for the next couple weeks and months, we would, Skype with Calvin, almost every other night. Me and Randy and Calvin would get on Skype together, and we'd just talk about ideas and think through things that would be interesting to do. And, listing all our we had like these long lists of like ideas and interests we had, and we'd look at there's this website called like Springwise where you can see different startup business ideas. We finally, came to one that we really liked. We all really find some value in nostalgia and memory, and sort of Calvin takes a lot of photographs, or Randy takes a lot of photographs that he has from his travels. Calvin, will dig up old emails from time to time that he really likes, and kept a live journal in the past that has some great stuff in it. And then I have like a journal that I keep that records like what I've been doing last year, the year before that. So in 10 years, I can see like what I was doing every single day, in every day. So we sort of crystallized this idea, and then we worked on this application to describe it, to sell ourselves. I think one of the things we did a lot of was we got a lot of feedback on the app. We sent it to a lot of friends. and we would send it partly to like entrepreneurial friends to give us feedback on the idea, and then we'd send it to friends who are good writers, and we'd have them just like critique the writing. Is it clear? Does it make sense? So by the time we had submitted the app, we had had several rounds of feedback from multiple people, and we integrated that feedback together. We got invited to interview, and when we did, we were told that they weren't so sure about this idea that we had. They didn't know how it was going to get traction, and so they wanted us to think of another idea. And this was like a week before the interview. We're like, holy crap! Like, we need to come up with another idea. We spent like months coming up with this idea. Like, now you want us to come up with another idea in a week? So we like spent a lot of time talking through new ideas, and I think one iteration of like Ride Joy came up, but then it got shelved because of the time we were thinking about it in a different way. And so we finally, the night before the interview, we like come to this idea about let's print photo books that are personalized based on it's like only a slight shift from the memory space. So you interviewed with this idea about photo books, and they were a little skeptical, but then they also said like Paul Graham was like, this could be the Altair Basic, which is his big metaphor for the fact that Microsoft created an Altair Basic compiler, which at the time wasn't very impressive because not many people use Altair Basic, I guess, but that compiler could then be used for a number of other languages, which did make it useful. And then, it's only a few steps sort of to something really powerful. So, the fact that Paul Graham recognized that there was a seed of something there was good. But otherwise, it was kind of a negative feeling atmosphere. There was like moments in the interview where there were like long periods of silence. And, all the interview prep that we had read was like, be prepared for like rapid fire questions, and like, you're not going to be able to answer all the questions. And we were like, they're not asking any questions. I don't know if this is good. Like, so, but, we, we did the interview. We went home to Calvin's house, and we just kind of sat around, waiting, because they call you that day to tell you whether or not you're going to get in. And, we were just hanging out, and it was getting later, and then Calvin's like on the phone with somebody. He's like, and we're like, who's he talking to? And then he's like, let me put you on speakerphone. And then, he puts it on speakerphone, puts it on this table that me and Randy were sitting at, and he's like, it was Paul. And he's like, hey guys, we'd like to, we'd like to invest in you, and blah, blah, blah. And he lays out these terms, and they're like, oh. And he's like, so what do you think? Do you want to do it? And you don't have to say now, you can call back. And we're like, yeah. Yep. Yeah, we want to do it. So that was that process.
Okay, cool, awesome. Then you go into the program, you change your idea. Tell me a little bit about how that happened, and then also like just at a brief high level, how the program is structured and kind of what the big value is and what you learned out of it.
Yeah. So Y Combinator is a seed fund. Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, we're going somewhere? I figured we'd just be here, because why do we need to go anywhere? Is Lauren going to the office?
I think so. Let me call. I'll call.
All right, just chat me. Sorry.
No problem.
We're doing it here. Okay, so Y Combinator is a seed fund. They call it an accelerator, and the idea is that you have this business. It's going well. These 3 months is a time where you can really just like hunker down, really make a lot of progress, and do a lot, so that at the end you have an opportunity to present in front of around 200. Now it's like 300 investors at what's called Demo Day. There are weekly dinners on Tuesday night at the office, at their, office in Mountain View, where you get to eat with all your other batchmates, chat, mingle, socialize, learn from each other. And, you listen to a speaker, usually a well-known entrepreneur, venture capitalist, talk about their experiences, and it's very sort of honest, very candid. People, sort of share things that it's all off the record. So, they share things that they normally wouldn't share in a more public forum. You have office hours where you meet with the YC partners like Paul Graham or Paul Buchheit, who invented Gmail, or like Gary Tan, the founder of Posterous, and talk about your business, talk about your challenges, and otherwise you're working a lot. So that's sort of the format, and obviously Y Combinator makes a small investment in your company. You also get sort of follow-on, so there's an equity investment of between 15 and 20, 25,000, depending on how many founders you have, or maybe like 10 to 20. I don't know exactly the numbers, but then there's this follow-on investment that's $150,000 in convertible notes, which aren't directly equity investments, but can convert into equity investments at a later round. So with that, you basically have, $170,000 that you can go towards, working on your company, which is a tremendous start. You get that access to these, entrepreneurs and investors in YC who have seen so much. And I think the most underappreciated thing from an external perspective is the batchmates, because you have these, it's like grad school in a way, except that people have done really cool stuff rather than just, going to college. They are really smart, they're really capable, and they will take your emails. They will respond to you. They'll tell you stuff that you wouldn't hear from other people. They'll make the introductions that are really valuable, that sort of cost them some political or social capital, right, to do that. But they'll do it, and that's a tremendous asset to have 150 people all of a sudden who are ready to do that for you, and you're ready to do that for them. That's a huge amount of value. So that's the program.
Cool. And then how did you guys change from the yearbooks idea or the photo books idea to RideJoy?
I mean, it was really just the fact that we was forced to come up with a new idea over the course of a week. So there are things about the idea that we hadn't fully thought through, and the idea of being a physical goods company, printing, that wasn't something. We realized that we were better off focusing on something that was all digital. And so we returned to the ride sharing idea and thought through it some more, thought through some opportunities and some sort of strategies that would make it more effective. And when we realized that we had some of those, we went forward with it.
Got it.
But in between that, we also examined it numerous other ideas and thought about them and messed around and did some small experiments, and the ride sharing one ended up being the best. Got it.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what it's like to work at RideJoy now. What is your current role? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I mean, it's evolved over time tremendously. It's three of us in our apartment working all the time, to having an office, having employees. So there's always been stages. We were recruiting for we after YC we went and fundraised. So me and Calvin spent a lot of time talking to investors, and then we were hiring our community manager. And I was doing all this. Before that, I was doing all the email support, all the live chat. Once the community manager came on board, Margot, who is incredible, we trained her to do a lot of those things. So there's some training process, and then we spent time trying to go after events. So I was, going out there on the phone, calling people, trying to get their events to use RideJoy as a ride-sharing platform. Then we were working on an iPhone app, and then we were, doing press for that iPhone app, and talking to journalists about the product, things like that. It's just evolved tremendously over time, and it's on a day-to-day, it can look kind of the same, but from a month to month, it can be very different. So
Sure. Jason, where do you see yourself ideally going in the future, medium term, long term? And how do you feel what you're doing today will help you toward that goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always going to be wanting to build things and make things uh, and create organizations that do good and do good for people. So it really, it really is sort of on a larger scale. It's going to be kind of the same. What that looks like, on a smaller scale is going to depend, right? Like I really believe in what we're doing at RideJoy. I really think it has a lot of potential, and we're doing the best we can to sort of capitalize on that opportunity. Startups are always a risky venture, so there's no guarantee that this is going to work out and be the next Facebook, although we would love it to, and we're doing everything we can to make it be the best it can be. So it's really hard to say where things will be, but if I'm not working at RideJoy, I'd be working on another kind of project or opportunity. And one thing that I really like about RideJoy is that it's opening up options for people. It's allowing them to get places where they otherwise couldn't. It's helping them form connections and friendships with people that they otherwise wouldn't have been in contact with. And I really love that. And I hope that whatever I am working on, the product or the service provides that similar kind of value to people, because that really is meaningful to me.
Yeah, for sure. So you've done a lot of just really diverse things in your career so far. You've started a nonprofit, you've worked in the startups, you've led an athletic team, you've ran a newspaper, and now you're running your own startup, or you're co-running your own startup. What are if you could pass along wisdom, if you could sort of talk to your younger self several years back, what are the big lessons that you would want to impart from, combining all these experiences that have just now made you a more capable, competent, effective person?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things here. Let's see. The first is like learn how you learn best, and try to gain skills that are useful. I found that I've learned best through doing projects. So I do projects that require me to obtain certain skills that are necessary to make the project work. I didn't set out to be like, I need to be good at sales, but through from that book to doing Gumball, required me to go out there and talk to people, convince them to do something or to join our group or to whatever. And you get better and better with things like that over time, and it's a very useful skill that can be sort of spread across different things. I would say don't be afraid to sort of jump around a little bit, because especially if you are doing something creative, if you see yourself in a creative role, those experiences, those lessons, and that diversity will benefit you in the long run. Um, and I think the last thing is, when you see an opportunity, like, go after it. You can't manufacture opportunities. You can't manufacture good luck. I can't tell people, like, if you want to start a startup, just start a nonprofit while you're in college with a guy who's a CS grad from Stanford, and then have as your other roommate this other guy who's an amazing engineer who happens to work at a startup. Like, that's not useful. But what maybe is more useful is saying, look, you don't know when the opportunity is going to come, but keep your eyes peeled. Continue to make yourself someone who is smart, well-connected, and influential, has skills, is capable of doing a lot of different things. Recognize where you can add a lot of value, where there are people who could help you, augment your skills, complement your skills, and where you share sort of that share values and share vision. And when an opportunity arises to work with them, like, jump on it, right? So be prepared and keep your eyes peeled.
Awesome, thanks. Well, I wish we had more time. I do see we're coming to the end of our time, but I enjoyed this conversation immensely. It was very insightful for me. I hope it will be insightful for others, and really just wanted to thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us today, Jason.
It was great to be here, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me on.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.